So today we're going to be talking about the group theory project. We picked attachment theory and behavioral theory, also known as behaviorism, and the learning objectives is to learn basic information about these two theories, the similarities and differences between these two, and then the application. So the when, why, and the how these can be used in life. First, we're going to start with attachment theory. So, attachment theory explores how individuals develop specifically within the context of family and intimate relationships. It was developed by John Bowlby, and he was a British psychologist and psychoanalyst who believed that early childhood attachments played a critical role in later development. He said that he argued that humans have an innate need for protection, affection, and security, and that had to be given early in life for it to make a difference. Overall, strong emotional and physical attachment to at least one primary caregiver is critical to personal development. These infants remember these interactions, and over time they form this cognitive model which influences their behavior and expectations, specifically in relationships. So Mary Ainsworth, who did Strange Situation Experiment, developed these 4 different attachment styles. And in this strange situation test, she had a caregiver and their baby come into the lab. They got comfortable, played with toys. Then she introduced a stranger, kind of felt it around. Then the caregiver left, and the baby was left with the stranger. And then the caregiver would come back, and the stranger would leave. And she looked to see how the baby reacted and their behaviors. And in this way, she developed these attachment styles. So she came up with securely attached, which means the infant experiences warm and supportive caregiving, so they have low avoidance and anxiety. They develop positive models of themselves, and they trust and have individual growth and high quality. Then she said there's avoidant attachment style, which you can see in the meme, "Sorry babe, I need my space now." So these people had limited experience with caregiving, high avoidance, low anxiety, difficult to trust others, and they were less willing to provide care to their partners. So they kind of just want their freedom. They want to be in a relationship, but they don't want the closeness or the intimacy as much. They don't care about it as much. Then we go to anxious. So anxious has a history of inconsistent caregiving. So when they're in a relationship, they really need to know that you care and that you're going to do stuff for them. This is low avoidance and high anxiety. So even though they want high levels of care, they're also willing to give high levels of care themselves to others in the partnership. And then lastly, disorganized attachment style, which was developed later, is showing atypical caregiving from individuals. So if their parents were abusive or if they went through a big trauma in their childhood, they'll be disorganized attachment style. These have commitment issues, and trust issues. So they switch back and forth between wanting to be attached and wanting to belong, and then the need to survive and fearing that relationship. Next, we have behaviorism. So this was developed by John Watson, and he was an American psychologist who established the school of behaviorism. He said that all behavior is learned, and that children learn to behave in a certain manner through conditioning processes. And so, concluding with that, any parent is capable of raising well-developed, intelligent children as long as they have the right conditioning processes. Along with that, he said children have no active role in their development, so only outside processes play a role in their development. Children don't have the upper hand in how they developed. It's the parents, the school, the environment. Behaviorism falls into 2 categories: classical conditioning and operant conditioning. Classical conditioning was by Ivan Pavlov, who was a Russian physiologist, and he showed classical conditioning with his dog experiment. So when he presented food to a dog, the dog salivated. That's the unconditioned response is salivating, and the unconditioned stimuli is presenting food. So then he introduced a stimuli of a bell, which would be the condition. He would do that while giving the food. So eventually, after repeatedly doing this, when the dog heard the bell, he would salivate just at the sound of the bell, even if there was no food, which is the conditioned response. Next, operant conditioning, which is by B.F. Skinner, who was an American psychologist and behaviorist, said that a person performs a behavior, and if it's rewarded, they'll repeat it, and if it's punished, they won't repeat it. The similarities between these two mostly go back to how they influence the child's development critically. They can both be used in clinical or non-clinical settings as well. So parents can understand attachment style and use it to see how their child's developing, how they're making friendships, etc. Same with behaviorism. They can learn, okay, if I reward this, this will keep happening, and if I punish it, this won't happen, and how to deal with that. Mostly, these affect children in their later life. So if they've learned something through behaviorism, that's going to continue on into their adult life. Same with attachment style. That attachment style that they develop early on is how they're going to act and how they build relationships. Lastly, one of the deeper similarities is that the way children develop have to deal with outside processes, not their internal self. We see that in behaviorism specifically, but we also see it in attachment, because the attachment style has to do with how the parent gives to their needs of the children. If they feed them when they're crying or are there to soothe them. Same with behaviorism. It's how the parent or the outside sources reward or punish these behaviors. It's not the child themselves. Differences, though, they both look at different aspects. So one's a family theory and one's a learning theory. One looks at the parent-child relationship and the other looks at the behaviors taught or learned. So one influences learned behaviors and can help fix a child that's misbehaving or stuff like that, and the other influences relationships and how to build better relationships or knowing your attachment style so you can help figure it out. Next, we will have the application of attachment theory.
To illustrate the Bowlby's attachment style theories, we will look into some of the characters from the popular 90s show Friends. 4 of the main characters will be analyzed based on their childhood, behaviors, and relationships with others in order to place them into a style. These 4 characters will be Phoebe, Joey, Ross, and Monica. The first style illustrated will be the secure attachment style depicted by Phoebe Buffay. Phoebe's backstory is not heavily described throughout the show, but it is known that she had a traumatic childhood with a seemingly evil and manipulative twin sister. She faced homelessness and her mother committed suicide. Her only family member that she had valued relationship with was her younger brother Frank, to whom she fulfilled the motherly role for and even had triplets for him and his wife later on. Due to her traumatic childhood, she developed a naive sense of reality as a coping mechanism for the trouble she had gone through. This naivety eventually developed into her secure attachment style due to her ability to shield out the negative parts of life and relationships. She exhibits a good sense of self-esteem and has a positive outlook on herself, seen by her fun-loving personality and lasting relationship with her friends. Phoebe is also constantly growing and developing as an individual through the progression of the show. One can notice this with her personal, honest, and secure, intimate relationship with her fiancé, Mike, as well as the constant love and support she gives to her friends. The avoidance style is heavily characterized by Joey Tribbiani. Similar to Phoebe, Joey's upbringing does not match his attachment style. He came from a large, loving Italian family where he was the only son and had 6 other sisters. He is extremely protective of his sisters, which is contradicting to his attachment style seen in his relationships. He holds this childhood personality and is loyal and caring towards his family and friends. And it may be this childish personality that causes him to have little to no emotional investment in his romantic relationships. Joey makes excuses to avoid women that he dates and finds marriage, quote, depressing and restrictive, unquote. A possibility for this behavior could be that he finds intimate emotional relationships too much work and is not able to set aside his childlike personality in order to take adult relationships seriously. It comes to no surprise that the epitome of anxious attachment style is embodied by Ross Geller. Growing up, he was adored by his parents and hated by his sister Monica. This combination could be the reactants that formed his hopeless romantic personality. The show starts with his divorce to his first wife, who left him to be with another woman. This situation shotgunned his constant thoughts that every relationship was doomed to end. It could also be the reason why he was married and divorced 3 times. His dire need for close, intimate relationships causes him to be impulsive and marry women quickly and cling to their side. He craves closeness and fears abandonment to the point where he struggles to make up his mind of what he truly wants. Most noticeably, Ross's style makes him extremely sensitive to his partner's actions or moods, which sends him to an emotional and a moody spiral. Lastly, if you have watched Friends, the last thing that comes to mind when you hear disorganized is Monica Geller. However, if we analyze her childhood and her adult tendencies in life and relationships, one can see that she does have a disorganized attachment style. Her childhood was traumatic, mostly because of her overweight past and hypocritical mother. She didn't feel like her parents loved or appreciated her the same way they did her older brother Ross. This complicated relationship with her parents caused her to overcorrect in her adult life, in all aspects they criticized her on. Monica is now obsessed with control and structure and holds high expectations for her relationships, careers, and life due to her lack of parental support growing up. Those with disorganized attachment also don't learn healthy ways to self-soothe, which is why Monica is extremely anal when it comes to cleanliness. Throughout the show, she exhibits some commitment issues in all her relationships, and her high anxiety toward intimate relationships causes her to seem clingy and somewhat crazy at times.
Next is our behavioral attachment theory, our behavioral theory application.
Hello ladies, welcome to class. I want to get your feedback on the class that your teachers are putting together for you. But before we proceed, I have one important class rule. When making your comments or answering a question, you must raise your hand and wait to be called upon before answering, because I can't tolerate class outbursts. The desired feedback is on a future sex education class.
Well, it's about time.
As I mentioned, I would appreciate it if you would raise your hand and wait to be called upon before answering. Yes, I know.
Teacher, will this class be abstinence-based or more informative?
Excellent question. And thank you for raising your hand. To answer your question, we're working on that now, and we want to know what you think.
We need to know if it's abstinence-based.
One more outburst, Tammy, and you're going to go into the corner.
But I just...
To the corner. 3 minutes. Class, we're going to try a different tactic. Okay, you're going to stay in the corner for 3 minutes, and then we're going to try a different tactic. And when you follow the class rule, you'll receive a treat for raising your hand. Does that sound like a good idea?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, what are some things that you would like to cover in our sex education class? Yes,
Can we cover the woman's reproduction cycle, please?
yes.
Can I get candy? I raised my hand.
This time, yes. Okay, very good question, Ayana. Thank you for following the rules. You get a treat. Okay. Well, ladies, I appreciate all of your wonderful comments. You've given me a lot to think about and discuss with your other teachers in developing this class.
When does the class start?
Overall, behaviorism is a theory of learning that's based on the idea that all behaviors are acquired through some conditioning, whether it's operant conditioning, giving rewards or punishments, or it's classical teaching them how to act through a certain behavior. The attachment theory shows the importance of parent-child relationships and its later implications, and how they'll develop intimate relationships or platonic relationships. Both of these not only can be used in HCF careers like social workers, therapists, but they can be used in everyday life. So teachers can use them when dealing with students in their classroom, parents can use them, friends can use them to know your attachment style. And although these two theories deal with different aspects, they both greatly influence overall how a child develops and their later adult life. And these are our references.